The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Skees, and I'm the Director of Media for TAPS. We're going to get started in a few minutes, but first we have some housekeeping issues that I want to go over. So first off, this webinar is being recorded, and it will be available on the TAPS YouTube page. You can find that at youtube.com/tapsbiz. We're also going to include a link in the follow-up email that everybody who registered for today's webinar will get tomorrow. And we'll be posting the links to our website and on our social media channels. So if there's somebody that you know who missed us today, who needs to see this information, please forward that email to them. Second, if you have questions, please use the questions feature in the GoToWebinar interface. We're going to try to answer those as we go through the presentation. But if we don't get to your question in the presentation, there's going to be a Q&A session after. We had a handful of questions that were submitted in advance via email, and I've shared those with our presenters. We should be able to cover all of those. If we don't get to your question, though, or if it's something that's too specific or too in the weeds for us to answer appropriately in this venue, please send us an email at info@taps.biz after the webinar or call us at the TAPS office. Third, I'm working from home. The daycares are still closed, so please forgive me if you hear my kids screaming in the background. But I am joined from the office today by Brian Bunzelmeyer, the TAPS Executive Director, Robert Huckabee, the Director of Compliance, and Steve Prudhomme, the TAPS Associate Director. We also have Will Dixon from the TAPS office staff in there helping us behind the keyboard today. So I'm going to hand it over to Robert, and we're going to get started with our presentation.
All right, John, thank you very much. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Hope everyone is staying safe and doing well. Obviously, we're in some times that none of us envisioned a couple of months ago. Appreciate all you're doing at your school level, trying to manage your world and navigate things. We've been very busy in our office as well, trying to make plans for getting back to activities as quick as we can. Purpose of our webinar today is to give you some information. Want to introduce Steve Prudhomme. Steve, say hi to everyone.
Good afternoon.
And Brian Bunzelmeyer, Executive Director. You've seen Brian in a few videos lately. Say hi, Brian.
Thank you all for being here. Appreciate you joining us today.
All right. The purpose of our webinar today is to kind of wrap up some things from the spring semester and then try to help hopefully give you some direction for things coming up in the summer and into the fall. We'll start with some spring things we need to wrap up. Brian, tell us some things that our member schools need to be doing to wrap up our 2019-20 school year.
Before I jump into that, just a continuing theme here from the TAPS staff, the TAPS office, the executive board, our athletic executive committee, the leadership of TAPS, leadership of your organization, our organization. Just a big thank you to all of the coaches, the teachers, their supporting staffs for all of the spring activities. We all understand the heartbreak that occurred. We tried to stay on course as long as we could through our planning and our preparation to come back until Governor Abbott said we couldn't. But most of all, we want to send that thank you and that shout of praise out to all of the seniors, whether it be fine art or athletics. Their preparation cannot be it cannot be thanked enough. It cannot be appreciated enough. So to all of our seniors, when you see them, we appreciate them just like you do. They're our kids as well as your kids. We take pride in that all of the kids in TAPS and all of the adults in TAPS, all of our sponsors, we are one big family and we're proud of what we tried to do. So as we get into the spring of 2020, the decisions that were made by the staff and the board for what we were able to do for awards, it was very difficult. It took a lot of conversation, a lot of thought. But at the end of the day, a third of our contests and TAPS were not able to be brought to a conclusion, whether that be academics or art, whether it be music. But along that way, we had baseball and softball, your tennis districts and your golf districts, et cetera. So, you know, when 1/3 of our opportunities were not provided, some decisions had to be made. Many schools had not even begun district play, so the board, with the staff's input, we determined that all district honors would not be available for the spring of 2020. If you can't have all district, then all state was the next domino to fall, and all tournament, because we couldn't play the tournaments. Those 3 dominoes fell pretty quickly together. And then I'm going to jump to the Henderson Cup. We had gotten through the fall and the winter sports. We were able to conclude our basketball tournament, which brought an end to the winter. However, again, we left a third of our events sitting out there, unable to be brought to conclusion. So after much consideration, the board determined that no Henderson Cup would be offered for at the 2020 banquet. So the Henderson Cup will begin again next year. But for this year, it'll have an asterisk next to it. None were presented. We're going to talk about academic all-state because as we look through the academics of our students continued forward, whether or not their seasons did, and the board was able to make a few changes there that would allow students to receive that recognition. The numbers were put out earlier. For the best of my knowledge, we were allowing 3 in boys and girls tennis. We were allowing 3 in track, 3 in golf. And I'm sorry, track had 5 and the fine arts 5, and up to 5 in baseball, softball. So we'll send that email back out. The deadline for those entries is tomorrow. So basically, if they were a junior or senior and their cumulative GPA of 90 or better, and they can be one of those 3 to 5 students that each school can nominate. We know that others may have had, in other years, you might have had more that might qualify, but the limitations were approved by the board, so those limitations stand. So there's a submission form and link on the website. We'll send that back out again after this webinar. So academic all-state for your spring activities, and that does include the fine arts of art and academic LD debate, whether it be music, etc., and also golf, tennis, and track, and baseball, softball. So academic all-state. With that brings, for the most part, an official end to the TAPS spring and to the TAPS scholastic year of opportunities. So at this point, we're moving forward towards our summer activities and moving towards next fall. So if you do have those academic all-state students, if you haven't submitted them already, please do so. To all of those that have submitted those, thank you for making our job a little bit easier by getting them in early. So that's where we are, Robert, on the spring of 2020.
All right, thank you, Brian. And part of that transition will include rank 1. Steve, if you would, give us just a quick overview for all of our listeners of rank 1, their help with us last year in our database and what we're doing going forward.
Yeah, we were able to partner with Rank 1 beginning last year with our database and also our eligibility for student and coach. And we've been building the program as the year's gone on and learning more and more. And it's been a challenging experience and a rewarding experience as we move forward. And now we have to turn our attention to working inside of Rank 1 and getting all our information ready, because we have to transition, unfortunately, now out of 2019-20 into our next school year. And right now, Rank 1 is central to getting a lot of these things accomplished.
Thank you, Steve. Brian, if you would, go through some of those things that they need to be working on now in Rank 1 to prepare for next year.
So with Rank 1, we began last year. We gave some grace where we could as far as getting students and information and coaches and information and how forms were moving forward. One thing that I want you to remember as we move forward is it is our official database for coach compliance, coach eligibility, and student eligibility. So everything is extremely important. If your school has not attended one of the Rank 1 webinars and promoted your students for next year so that you now have a new tab up there that says 2021, we'll send that information out again. We've posted it and sent it out a couple of times already. If you have not received that, or if you need additional information, please jump in there at info@taps.biz, B-I-Z, and we can get that information to you as well. But we need your students promoted, and then along with that, once the students are promoted, you can begin adding your new students to the 2021 school year. And at that point, they can be doing their student acknowledgement of rules, their medical history forms, and you can begin uploading your physicals. We'll talk about those later. Transfer students will have a STF, a student transfer form to complete, and the PAPF, the previous athletic participation, they'll be able to get that form at that time. So there are a lot of our schools, as I'm sitting here today, that still have our medical history, our physical form, our STF, and our PAPF linked to your website. So if you are the website manager for your school, or if you are in charge of those forms, you need to go to your website and take the student acknowledgement of rules, the professional acknowledgement of rules, the medical history, the physical, the transfer forms all need to be removed from your website because those are all done through Rank 1. So it might be a big change. We should have done that last year, but we're moving forward. So we'll talk about transfer students and medical situations here in just a little bit, but now we'll move on. The next part of Rank 1, that is extremely important right now. I dare say there's going to be staff turnover at most of our schools, if not all. Some staffs are radically changing. We have a multitude of, as we do each year, new athletic directors, new fine art directors, and new teachers and coaches. It's important that your staff is updated in Rank 1. So if you're the athletic director, fine art director, we need to get your new staff in. When you sign them up and when you send them their request, then they need to make sure they put in their home phone number, and we need all of their roles. So in my coaching days, I coached cross country, boys and girls. I coached girls basketball. I coached boys and girls tennis and boys and girls track. If they're doing all of those, and I was also the academic advisor. So they need to be, all of those roles need to be listed for each. So if you have a coach and they're doing multiple things, we need that. It's important that we have a cell phone. One of the opportunities that we have, and we're looking forward to more and more, is the immediacy of information. If you've been to track, this was the first year that the field day for track in many years would have been dry. It would have been a little breezy, but it would have been dry. If we have to do something that we need to make phone calls, it's hard for us to get a hold of you. We don't have your cell phone number. So each coach needs to put their cell phone number in there when they go. Your students do need to be updated and promoted. And then for all of those sitting at home that don't have a lot to do right now, or maybe you've got some extra time on your hands, we need for you to begin putting your Rank 1 schedules in. Your schedules need to go in Rank 1 and Score Stream. Both of those are required. Last year, we allowed Score Stream to be optional. It's not optional this year. We have information on our website, and Score Stream can help as well. So get your schedules in, especially for football and volleyball. Make sure your football schedules, 6-man, 11-man, and make sure your volleyball schedules, your fall soccer schedules, make sure your fall team sports to begin with. You've got time right now, those games that you know, and make them public so we can all see them. So that's where we are with Rank 1 at the present time. We'll be glad to answer any questions as we go forward on Rank 1.
All right, thank you, Brian. The next topic that we'll cover is student medical information. We've had a lot of questions in the office here over the last month or so with regard to what will be required this next year. And so, Brian, if you would address what we've historically done and then how that's going to be viewed going forward.
With our renewed emphasis and our continuing emphasis on the student health and safety, the medical history and the physical forms are extremely important to not only the student, to the coach, to the school, but also to our organization. As we moved into Rank 1 last year, a few of the glitches that came up were getting all the information, the documentation in ahead of time, making your students turn green so that they were eligible. And we allowed some side steps that we are not going to allow this year. So to that point, for your medical forms, all students participating in TAPS must complete the medical history form. That's for your benefit. That's for the student's benefit. Someone at your school will then know their allergies, et cetera, et cetera. You may be collecting that in a different form. We need the parents to take a few moments to participate and do that. The medical history form is completed by the family, and the form is accessed through the student profile in Rank 1. So again, they can't do the medical history form. They can't put their physical in. You can't put their physical in until that data is in there. So new students to your school, incoming 8th graders, 9th graders who are transferring, once you've promoted all of your old students from last year, the medical history form must be done and must be current this year. It is then the next one, the form should be reviewed by school personnel. Having been both the trainer and the coach, it's extremely important that if somebody tells you they have a peanut allergy, that somebody on campus knows that, so the peanut butter and jelly sandwich doesn't shut you down at the basketball tournament. So the medical history form must be done in Rank 1, and all students must do that. Then the next one that we have coming up is the physical form. I've had many questions about what the UIL is doing. We watched their meetings. We've talked with the UIL, so understand that we've had many conversations across many channels. The TAPS and the UIL guidelines are different for a reason. TAPS believes that each year students should have a physical before participating. And so that is the TAPS requirement. That's been in that way for over a decade, that all students must have a physical. All physicals must be loaded into Rank 1. And yes, Rank 1 is HIPAA compliant. and they are data breach as safe as they can be. They have not only our information, but other organizations' information. They understand the intricacies of that much more than I do, and they are compliant. So who has to have a physical? Right now, if any student presented you with a major injury last year, a major concussion, an ACL, an MCL, a major question, before they can participate in practice beginning in the fall, they must have a physical. So major injuries must have a physical. If the answers to yes to any of the cardiac questions, and on our medical history form, you'll see several questions that if a yes, a physical is required. So if the parent has marked yes and they correctly marked yes, you can ask and say, did you mean to do that? And they say, nope, I answered it wrong. Then of course, we're not going to make them go get that at this time. But if they answered yes, and it is a question that requires a physical, we must have that take place. So what are we going to do about physicals this year with the COVID-19 situation, doctors' offices being closed, things being collaborated up? So here's the rule for TAPS, and we push this out April 2nd, and we push this out May 2nd. And we can, if you'll email us at info@taps.biz, we'll be glad to resend you a copy of that if you need a hard copy. TAPS is going to require a physical this year as soon as possible for the students to get there, meaning you must have a physical on file and in rank 1 for each student that the activity requires that. For football, cheer, basketball, band, they all have to have a physical. Choir and instrument and other one-act play do not. But if your physical is required, you do have to have a physical this year. What we're waiving or amending, and Robert can correct me here if my terminology is wrong, we are granting grace that you must get the physical in as soon as possible, meaning once your doctor's opened back up, once your insurance can gets paid for it, all those things. So it may take a month or two. You may not be able to get that physical in until September or October. Then you just need to reload last year's physical. So we're not requiring the physical if the student cannot obtain it until such time as they can obtain it, but there must be a physical on file in rank 1. Robert or Steve, if I need clarification there, please help me.
No, that's correct. The fine arts categories that will require physical are cheer, dance, and band. Other than that, all the athletics, all the other fine arts will not require that physical portion of that medical requirement.
No, we just need to stay on it. And schools, we're here to support you as we move forward. We go through this at the beginning of every year, but making sure that we get those physicals in is a priority, and it's a health and safety issue. And so we urge you to get on it early and let us know and keep us in the loop if there's issues that you're having, and we can kind of walk through it with you and kind of help you get everybody in compliance as soon as you can.
As a reminder, the medical history information and the physical are to protect the student, the school, the organization, and most of all is to work with the student in case they have issues. Some don't know. There's a lot of sudden cardiac arrest and sudden cardiac incidents where the person may not have even known they had a condition and may not have had any prior symptomology. So we're going to move forward. Robert, what's our next topic?
All right. The next topic that involves rank 1 and also is something that you deal with every year are students new to your school, transfer students. There are kind of two categories there, 8th grade moving into 9th grade. How are those addressed? And then your true transfer students, those transferring from one high school to your high school during their high school career. Brian, get us up to date on that.
Let's start with the 8th grade to 9th grade matriculation, whether it's at your school, if you're a K through 12 school and they're just moving up, or whether you're a high school only and they're moving in from another school. The requirements are pretty much the same. Prior to participating in the high school activities that we mentioned, including all athletic activities and the fine art of cheer, dance, and band, they must be there. So 8th grade students must be enrolled in the high school before they can participate with you, and they must have completed the school year for 1920 on the campus. So if before you can have those students come participate in live action and live whatever you're doing, once you're able to go to that point, they must have moved on from their previous campus. Because right now, if the 8th graders at ABC Middle School and they don't get out until May 31st, they don't become your student until after May 31st. So it's important to remember that date is important. However, once they've completed the enrollment process and you've promoted your students, as soon as possible, you should enter those students into rank 1. The student profile is completed and then is created and completed. You get them started, the parents create it and complete it. So 8th grade students moving on must be enrolled in your high school, and their previous campus must have concluded their junior high activities before they can participate in any activities with you. In high school, that's a high school transfer from one high school to another. It's usually pretty obvious. A student has attended a freshman and sophomore year at another school, and now they're coming to your school. That's a transfer student. What's not as obvious is when you have an 8th grade or 9th grade that start a school, start practice, or start activities at another high school, and then they come to you. So a student moving out of 8th grade has gone to a school in your area, and they have begun 2-a-days or whatever happens, whether it's volleyball or football after August 3rd, and that's a key date there is August 3rd. They begin working out with another school. They are now a transfer student. So they are now subject to section 104 of the TAPS bylaws. So 8th graders can be subject to the bylaws of section 104 in the transfer rules if they start somewhere else. That's an important designation. Go to the TAPS calendar, that's taps.biz, click on the big word calendar, scroll across till you get to September, and you're going to find in August, you'll see the senior transfer deadline, you'll see the transfer deadlines, and then we'll have the opportunity for appeal. So the big thing that I want you to remember, the senior transfer deadline is August 15th, or the date you begin school. So as you go through, seniors must be there for all activities. So if you have a basketball player, they've got to be there by August 15th or the first day you start school. Same with baseball and softball to be eligible for the current school year. The second Tuesday in September or whatever there's on the calendar, apologize, I'm not looking at it. That's going to be the fall transfer deadline as we go forward. Many people have asked, have we had consideration of moving the transfer deadlines? The transfer deadlines are going to stay firm. They're going to stay as we have them posted, both for the seniors and for normal. If appeal need to be made and there's grounds the board can't, our executive board can review along with the staff to determine if exception will be granted. So as of this date, those transfer deadlines are in place. So prior to representing the new school, this is whether it be if we're able to do 7-on-7, if we're able to do an early volleyball tournament or those kind of things, or 7-on-7 between your school and another school, if we're able to get back in June and July, they must have completed the registration process and all the required elements to go to acceptance. That includes whatever payments you require. Those all have to be done. They must have withdrawn from the previous school and or completed the last day of classes at the previous school. A lot of times your public schools don't officially withdraw a student until the first day of classes the next year. But for our purposes, students representing the new school must have completed the registration process and all the required elements. They're withdrawn or completed the last day at the previous school, and the rank 1's profile has been completed and created, or if you do it in actual order, created and then completed. So make sure we get the rank 1 and all those elements together as we go forward. So Robert, I want you to talk real quick about the transfer process and how this works as we move forward.
All right, thank you, Brian. As you know, we started running our transfer process through rank 1 last year. So for all transfer students you have, the process will be very similar. That process begins in rank 1 when your new families go in and create their student profile and complete and answer those questions. When they answer the question about are you transferring, they will be prompted and sent to the STF form. They will complete that online and that will be submitted online. When they answer the question, yes, I did participate at the previous school, they'll be prompted and sent to the PAPF. They'll then print that out. Obviously, that's a hard copy that has to go to the previous school, has to be signed by everybody at the new school. And then those are returned. When they're complete, you'll upload that into rank 1 just like we did last year. And of course, that process includes once that all is received here in the TAPS office, those who were part of this process last year probably received emails from Bruce Gunlock in our office. He's our employee here who scrubs all those for us, does his initial review, often reaches back out to the school to answer questions and to confirm that all the information is correct. He does his initial scrub. If everything looks in order, then he sends that out to the district schools, and they have 48 hours to review that, raise any concerns, questions, or objections that they have. If there are none, then that student is approved in rank 1. If there are comments or objections that need to be followed up on, we reach back out to the school. We gather all that information. If necessary, that district would hold a meeting They would review all that information. They would determine whether the student is approved or not at that point. If they are approved, then they move as approved into rank 1. If not, there is a process where they can appeal that decision to our executive board.
So the transfer process is unchanged. We're moving forward. TAPS is going to review each and every opportunity that comes our way. The team sports will be sent out to the districts. That's why it's so critical and so important that you have the head coaches for each of your activities, and make sure that you as an athletic director or fine art director, especially our athletic directors, have your names correct and your roles correct in rank 1 so that we can send that out. And Steve's got a quick ad here.
Yes, also, that's why it's important to get those parents to get everything filled out on the student profile, because rank 1 gives you prompts, and that we're trying to make sure that we don't miss anything, and we're making sure you don't miss anything. And so, but we get the prompts once they get that account done and they fill out the student profile.
All right, thank you, Steve. Hey, we've got a question here on the topic that we're just now discussing. The question is basically, is the August 15th deadline for senior transfers, does that apply for winter and spring sports as well? The answer to that is yes. The August 15th transfer for senior transfers, all senior transfers, regardless of the activity they plan on participating in throughout the year, they need to be enrolled in attending your school by that August 15th deadline. The only exception to that is if your classes don't start until August 15th or after August 15th, they need to be in by the first day of class. So that does apply for the entire school year for senior transfers.
That was a recommendation made several years ago and continued by our athletic executive committee, athletic directors and coaches, just like many of you. So as we move forward, it became formalized 2 years ago. This will be year 3 as we move forward. So if you have students that are considering your school, they remember that August 15th, their first day of school for seniors, is extremely important. I will say this, every transfer student is different. None of them look the same. None of them are the same, and their situations in life are different. If you have specific questions or specific instance, please email us at info@taps.biz, B-I-Z. You're going to hear that a lot today, but we do encourage you. We are still working for the most part digitally. But we're all here today. But for the most part, one of us can answer your question, or we can help you to ask the questions you need of those students. So transfer process unchanged from last year. We look forward to once you get the students promoted and in, the transfer process can begin as soon as you want to start sending that information in. We'll start working on transfers for the new year. All right, Robert.
Okay. Many of you tuned in to say, what can we do? When can we get going? When can we reopen our campuses? What can we do with regard to our school facilities? Steve, why don't you address that quickly?
Well, first of all, same as Governor Abbott was saying, Texas is a very, very large state. We can fit other states inside our counties very easily, inside some of our ranches if we wanted to. So we're dealing with 800 miles across, east to west, north to south, El Paso to Beaumont, and 254 counties. So as a longtime athletic director who's had to deal with people across the state, I know the different situations that are going on throughout the state and how difficult it is to work through it. So as we do this, we are taking into account not only as a statewide organization, but also we have to take into account what each district and each locale is going through. So as we answer this question, please keep in mind, Texas is big.
Before we move on from transfer students, there's a question that has come up of who has to complete a transfer. The transfer process is for all students new to your high school, whether they come from Louisiana, Arkansas, Oklahoma, New Mexico, Texas, or New York, Maine, or somewhere different. So all students new to your high school, if they're going to participate in activities, must complete that transfer process. If they have not competed in athletics previously, then there can be a waiver of the PAPF. That's the previous athletic participation form. So again, lots to cover on the transfer process. Section 104 of the bylaws has more outline. And if you need additional help or specific questions, please reach out to us.
All right, thank you, Brian. We're going to share a few thoughts in the next few frames about some things coming up. But we want to give our disclaimer that we've been giving all along every time we've communicated information to you about things we're thinking, things we're planning, things we'd like to be able to do in the process of moving from spring to summer to fall. we will always have this reminder out there. We're trying to communicate information to you about, we're going to talk about summer rules in a minute, when those go into effect, what that means. But keep in mind, whatever we say to you and whatever goals or restrictions we have out there, they're always subject to what the local, state, and national orders are allowing us to do. In our case currently, that's predominantly Governor Abbott. At the national level, a lot of the authority has been passed to the state governors to determine what they can do in their particular states. So we've been relying heavily on those orders. We understand he's going to speak again on Monday, so hopefully we'll have more information then. But just keep in mind, even though we have TAPS rules that say what you can and can't do during certain times of the year, those are always subject to the times we're living in now and all those orders and restrictions that we're living under on a day-to-day basis. Brian, talk to us a little bit about our timelines and things with regard to getting back to some activities.
Kind of echo what Robert said. You know, if you take an egg timer and turn it upside down and you get that 3 minutes of sand falling out of there, some of these decisions are changing every 3 minutes. So we're going to do our very best to stay on top of things. As a staff and as an executive board and AEC, we're sharing information as we get it. We are fortunate that we have some really good contacts within the NCAA and within other opportunities. And high school to high school, just understand that Texas is different. 254 counties, 270,000 square miles, no two look alike. So from the timeline, May, June, July, August, September, all of those things have a play in what we're looking at. I think some are possible and some may or may not be. They may come in later. As we go forward, the lines of authority are very important for everyone to understand. Your school has created rules for you right now about whether students can be on campus, whether you're virtual, whether you're doing packets, whether you can, whether your students can even come up to school. As we've read through the TEA guidelines, they're talking about into school drop-offs, escorting students in to pick up their books out of their lockers, et cetera. Many of our schools in TAPS are governed by the diocese, or even above that, the TCCED or other governing groups. Your city may have specific rules. Your county, if you're in Dallas County, it's been one of those situations where that it's changed quite a bit. Our state is Governor Abbott, and if you remember, he put the date of May 18th out there, and then he's had several conferences in between and amended those executive orders. So the state is changing as well. And we all looked in late March, and we saw President Trump give us that opportunity to see the CDC's plan for reopening. If you remember, there was a precursor, and then there was a phase 1, a phase 2, and a phase 3. Well, we haven't heard about that in the last 3 or 4 weeks. So that one's gone by the wayside. So as you know, your lines of authority, somewhere in there, TAPS falls below all of that. So your school, your diocese, your city, your county, or whatever, until everybody's opened back up, you're subject to those rules. So I'll discuss that a little bit more here in just a second. So in looking at May, my big question is what's going to happen? We've put a date of May 18. What does June look like? What is July? One thing I just really want to encourage, and I hope folks will understand and hear my heart on this. We cannot address rumors. We cannot address, hey, I heard. If a superintendent or an athletic director in San Antonio or Dallas or Houston or Austin or in Amarillo jumps up and says, this is fact and this is what's going to be, that may be their reality, but it may not be the reality unless it's grounded in executive orders. So we try not to, and I think we've done a good job so far of giving facts and giving you a step-by-step progression. So again, we're going to talk about May, June, July, August, September, and beyond, and we're going to talk about how the authority of your schools and all steps on top of that. So, Robert?
All right, let's talk about the transition from spring to summer. How does TAPS moving from summer rules on May 18th affect schools and practices? Brian, why May 18th?
When Governor Abbott issued his first order, May 18th was the date that we were going to move back. So I think as you look, why May 18th? May 18th was a date on a calendar. As we searched and went back through in rank 1 and looked at the last day of schools, many of our schools are concluding their curriculum this week and next week. So May 18th was a good jumping off point. So your last day of school for 2020 factors into us moving forward. And May 18th is when TAPS will say, moving forward, we're into summer rules. So you will be, if your school ends tomorrow, then Monday the 18th, TAPS summer rules apply. If your school ends next Thursday, May the 22nd or 21st, whatever it is, then that's when the summer rules will apply. So summer rules, there's two big changes between what's happening now and what happens once you move to summer. So the first thing that changes is that summer participation becomes voluntary. So right now you're in extracurricular or co-curricular, and you can require students to attend your Zoom classes, to attend whatever you're doing. As has been the case for many, many years, summer participation is voluntary. So you can push the information out. They may or may not attend, just like they may or may not have attended your weight rooms or your conditioning over the summer previously. Summer participation 4 years ago, we moved it to 15 total contact hours between school members and each student. So if a student were happen to be in cross country and football, their 15 hours includes the time they're in the weight room, the time they're running with the cross country coach, and the time they're out doing 7-7 or other football activities. So that's the big difference that changes. We go from mandatory participation to voluntary participation and 15 total contact hours between students and coaches. Robert, Steve, you have anything to add on that as we move forward?
No, you just go over section 136 and you apply that to the time and the conditions that we're under right now, and you move forward.
So section 136 has in-season, out-of-season, and summer regulations. Section 136, if you go to the TAPS website, taps.biz, lower right, left-hand corner, it says bylaws. Click on that, give it time to load, and jump down to section 136. We know it's long and it can be a little convoluted, but that's where it is. And if you have any questions as to what you're doing, we highly encourage you to ask permission instead of asking for forgiveness. So if you've got thoughts and ideas of how you're looking to move forward, we're glad to visit with you. So again, ask for permission, help us with your outlines of what you're wanting to do so that we can help you move forward as well. So as we also go forward, as we go into the summer months, the question becomes, what can we do and what can we not do with camps? TAPS has never and will not govern your camps. We don't govern what happens in your camps. We don't govern whether you can have a camp. We do govern that if your high school kids are coming to your camp, then that goes into your 15 hours a week. So camps are subject in that regard. We don't govern whether you can have a camp or not. That's your local city, your school, your diocese, your governing body, our governor, and I think he is going to talk about camps next week. That was one of the things that he had on his agenda as we go forward. Another thing as we move from go back up, Will, is we're still sitting here on the May 18th and transitioning from spring to summer. As you're moving from spring to summer, the opportunities to go do 7-on-7, to go do other, and that's a big question right now. I know football coaches are just chomping at the bit to get out there. But there is a difference between school-based programs and AAU or select or club. So there's a big, I read yesterday or the day before that the largest volleyball tournament in the world is going to be held in Orlando, Florida, where it's still scheduled. Well, the majority of those clubs that are going down there are not one school, and it's not sponsored by one school. So clubs are in a whole different world than school-based programs. A question was asked, what does it mean to be interscholastic competition? Well, interscholastic competition means if it's your school playing another school, i.e. 7-on-7 or summer league basketball or summer whatever, then that's interschool participation. So TAPS does have those rules that go back to the 15 hours of practice or whatever. I know there's going to be more questions on how we transition, but the main thing is, if your school is closed, then you cannot transfer, your school cannot transfer to summer rules until after your last day of instruction. So whether that's the 16th, the 22nd, or the 31st, whenever you finish your last day of instruction, even though we've opened it up as May 18th, your school has to be concluded with your school year for 1920 before you move on to the summer. So Robert, Will, if we pick up questions on that, we'll go back or we'll answer them at the end. So let's go ahead and move forward again. Transitioning to summer from fall, TAPS instituted 9 or 10 years ago, almost a decade now, the Dead Week. Dead Week was a situation that we created after input from our coaches and from our athletic executive committee. The concept behind the Dead Week was to give students and coaches staff time apart after they'd been there for the voluntary summer workouts. It gave them a time to go see grandma, great aunt, great uncle for the last time. And right now, to be honest with you, A lot of our folks aren't traveling. Dead week may be the opportunity for them to go travel. Another thing that we need to always consider, and it's sometimes hard, is that athletics and fine art competitions and teams are co-curricular and extracurricular. So students actually do have school time and they have school things to catch up. So many schools that we have talked to so far are going to have some form of summer enrichment. So students that need math help or science help to that extent can go back and get that in those last weeks of July or early August. We also have schools that are looking at beginning August 3rd. The TEA put out some guidelines. So if your school starts August 3rd, obviously you're going to jump right in and it's going to be a whole different world. You'll be subject to in-season rules as shown in section 136. So I'm going to go 10,000 foot view of Dead Week and some of the changes that we're looking at. The dates of Dead Week are on the calendar. It's the last week of July. It's been that week for several years, and now it is a full week again. It ends on the real TAPS year for all activities begins August 3rd. So Dead Week is an extension of summer. So if we make any changes to Dead Week, then Dead Week would be an extension of summer, which again would be limited to 15 hours of participation by each student and would be limited to voluntary participation. So Dead Week, we're looking at it. It hasn't been approved yet. We're going to get a little closer as the months and the weeks roll by to see how many changes. If we were to open up June 1, Dead Week might still stay in play. Dead Week applies to fall sports. It applies to all sports. So whether it be a cross-country coach, a basketball coach, a baseball coach, however it's going to be in play, remember it applies to all students. Contact hours, 15. School facilities include all school facilities. They include your batting cages, your pitching tunnels, your batting tunnels. It includes your wrestling room if you have it, your gym, etc. Not your curricular, not your classrooms, but it includes all that. As football, we're going to have a meeting next week and a webinar, but remember there is allowed and non-allowed equipment. For this situation, any potential change to Dead Week would have restrictions on equipment. There would be no pads allowed. There would be no hard shell equipment. There would be no balls, et cetera. So it would be for conditioning. One change that we would look at is that physicals could be, students could come to school and get their physical if you so arrange it during Dead Week, and parent meetings could occur. So I think there's a lot of things out there. There's also a question that's come across my desk. Could we issue equipment that day? Yes, I think that's been looked at. It's a possibility. But obviously handing somebody their helmet and their shoulder pads and putting in a locker is different than using them. So Dead Week, we're looking at a lot of different changes. If you have questions on those specifically as you're thinking or as you're planning and need clarification, info@taps.biz, shoot us that email and let us help you through that. So Dead Week has a lot of things going on. Robert?
Thank you, Brian. Like Brian said, those are all things we're looking at right now. We certainly want to do all we can to help you get your students back in shape, get them acclimated, get them ready for all those fall activities coming up. So we're continuing to look at all those options. And if you have ideas or thoughts, please share those with us. We've had a lot of conversations already along those lines with our AEC and our executive board. We'll continue to visit that issue and have specifics for you as we get closer to that time frame. Another question we've had that's come up over the last couple of months is we just did alignment last year, got all of you situated in your respective classifications and districts for the next 2-year cycle. And then with the breaks that were put on at the end of the year and all the things that you have dealt with in trying to finish the school year, there have been concerns raised about re-enrollment. Many of you were right in the middle of that re-enrollment process when this hit, did not get that completed. Don't know where you are with regard to your enrollment numbers, and many of you have shared concerns about your numbers not being what you anticipated or what you'd like them to be going into this next fall. And is TAPS looking at, or is TAPS considering any changes or modifications to our current alignment? Brian, would you address some of those things that we've been talking about and discussing?
So alignment 2020, to refresh everybody's memory, was based on your average number of students for the 2 years previous to this. As we're moving forward, a lot of numbers may change, and believe it or not, some schools are actually gaining students while many are losing students. And to be honest with you, I don't think many schools know where their actual status is. So everybody is working under the constraint of what they have. I know school budgets are being made on what we know is coming or what we think is coming, not necessarily what will come. Everybody's having to tighten the belt. TAPS is doing the same thing. TAPS continues to monitor COVID-19 and also the oil production. I think we forget that there's some things hitting us in West Texas and Houston and other areas with the price of oil dropping there for a while. I know it took a real impact to some of those communities. The alignments are posted on www.taps.biz. And they're as current as we can have them right now. We've asked a couple of times for athletic directors to look. So I'm going to ask you one more time to please go to taps.biz. On the left-hand side of the big word TAPS, you'll find the alignment tab. Go click on that alignment tab and then drop down to the team sports and click on there, one-act play. If you're a one-act player or fine art director, click on there. If your name shows up in those districts and you're thinking we're not going to have that team and you're pretty sure you're not going to have that team, please go ahead and let us know now so that we can let the members of your district know. If you're not on there and you think you should be on there, and let us know that as well. So it may be where, you know what, we were planning on doing six-man football, but with our numbers and way it's looking, maybe fall soccer is a better option for us. We're willing to look at anything, and the board has given us the opportunity to look at that and make some changes. So www.taps.biz. On the left-hand side of the big word TAPS, you'll find the word alignment. Click on alignment, drop down to team sports and one-act play. If you're there and you're supposed to be there, hallelujah. We're not moving you from district to district, but what we're looking for is, did we overlook you? Or if you know you're not going to play something, please let us know so that your districts, and if we were to have to collapse district, we'd rather know that ahead of time. So it is very important. I think the other side of that is everybody is going to have to take a huge deep breath as we move forward, because we really don't know, just like you don't know what our actual numbers are. Early July, somewhere right around the convention, we're going to send out a survey to get the enrollment data for us to begin review. It's an informal survey, but we would ask that you all complete it. We will ask for your most up-to-date numbers. So somewhere between July 1 and July 8th, you can plan on seeing that survey. Please complete it so that we can get a pretty good picture of what's going on across our state. The TAPS official enrollment snapshot date will remain in September, meaning that's what we will use for alignment. And if we were going to make any changes to the 2021 school year or the 21-22 school year, we would be using those official enrollment snapshots. So if we can get back to school, if you can get back in session, whether virtually or on campus, depending on what the situation allows, it's that September date that would allow that. The staff, I really want to commend the TAPS executive board and our staff for the communication and the process and the review. It's been a great effort. Our athletic executive committee has been in there as well. So your leadership continues to look at all options, and we will support the alignment process the best we can. If changes need to be made, we will make them where possible. I will say that with the last few years in the spring, we have lost a lot of baseball and softball teams over the last few years. Once the years begin, those teams in those districts are probably not as firm right now today as we'd like them. You may not know whether you're going to play baseball or softball until February or March next year. So again, if you know you're going to do it and you're not on there, let us know. If you're not going to do it, let us know that as well. So Steve's got a comment there, so we're going to let him jump in.
Yeah, also, you don't have to wait for that survey to come out. Informally, if you can share information with us, we're trying to keep us up to date with everybody as we can. Drop us an email or a call. People call the office asking for one little thing, and we end up quizzing them about their school. So we're trying to get as good and clear and complete a picture of what's going on around the state as possible. So don't be shy about dropping us a line and letting us know how you're doing.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Brian. We have a list of questions. We're going to try to get to those, as many as we can. Some of them we hope we've answered in some of the information that we've shared with you today, but I'll start going through those one at a time. I'll try to categorize them as best I can. One of our early questions in the webinar asked about ACSI's forecasting possible 10 to 30% decrease in enrollment this coming year for many schools. Schools in the lower classifications could potentially have difficulty fielding teams in some of their sports. Is or will TAPS consider allowing schools to use homeschoolers, 8th graders, or students who may be enrolled in a virtual format?
That's a question with about 20 moving parts, Robert. So I'm going to start this. For those of you who know me and those that don't, I've killed many trees. I've said that on other webinars. I am a fan of the note card. I create them, they line my floor with all the options. To say we have considered it, yes, we've considered many things as we've gone forward. So to start off, thank you for asking. Yes, we have, and yes, we're looking at it. As a staff, we're looking at many things. The executive board would have to make final authority on some of those things. So Robert, do me a favor and let's walk them back one by one instead of a group question. So the first area of concern that I would hear is, are we going to allow homeschool participation? That is not allowed by the TAPS Constitution. Though the board can look at it, it would require a membership vote. The board would have to determine whether or not we were even going to entertain that. Right now, my answer to you is I'm going to go back to the Constitution. No, homeschoolers will not be allowed. The next thing, Robert, was
8th graders.
8th grade participation by bylaw. 8th graders cannot participate with high school students in competition. So again, it goes back to you must be a full-time day student at the TAPS high school, and 8th graders cannot participate with or against. I do not see at the present time, until we get a clearer picture of what enrollment actually is, that 8th graders would be allowed. So if you're making plans, homeschoolers are a no, and 8th graders are a no.
The next category, and we've had this question come up with some of the changes that you've made in the distance and virtual learning modules at your school, would students who are enrolled in the school in some type of virtual format possibly be able to compete?
I think that several schools had done really good in the virtual format before this situation occurred. All of you have had to look at how you're going to move forward virtually, both large and small. So the Constitution requires that you be a full-time day student at TAPS. The bylaws say that you have to be enrolled in a minimum of 4 classes that count towards graduation and count in your GPA, and that those classes are attended at school on your campus. The board, staff, and AEC are reviewing opportunities there for virtual classing and how that would look. Additionally, we're looking at what would happen if you start in person, you have an outbreak and you have to go virtual, or something else causes you to go virtual and move forward. So long way to say we are looking at virtual classes. We are looking at how that impacts. We do not have a change in the bylaws or the authority at the present time. Steve?
Yeah, and ironically, this is not a new conversation. We've been talking about this and the things that were happening in schools and different forms of education, but this has shined a spotlight on it. And so the conversation continues, probably with a little bit more energy, I suppose.
I think the current situation forced us to get on the freeway. It's kind of like Houston. If you hit the freeway at 15 miles an hour, well, everybody else is going 100. We have got several options, though. So, folks, we're going to look at it. If your school, I'm going to ask this from our listeners and from our schools. If your school is considering a virtual format, a modified format, some kind of combination format, if you would do me a great favor, I'm going to throw that thing up there again, info, INFO at taps.biz with a Z. If you would send us that, and then Robert or Steve will reach back out to you, and we'd love to hear your thoughts and where you're looking, so we can try to, whatever rules or situations that we are going to review and perhaps allow things to change, we need to be that based on firm fact or firm concept, not just on rumor or our understanding. So Robert?
All right, thank you. Got a few questions here about summer. Question about sand volleyball, details, sand volleyball tournament. Are the dates still on? Is it still scheduled at this time?
So summer, for us, we're going to approach summer like we did spring. We're going to keep the dates on the calendar. We're going to keep it active as long as possible. We have moved sand volleyball back to the 29th and the 30th. Our hope is that our governor says we can go back to school, or rather go back to doing things. I'm hoping that by June 1, June 15, he says we're out there and we're ready to rock and roll. That nothing would make any of us happier to say that. However, parents may not agree, students may not agree, folks may not want to congregate as quick as we're allowing it. But our dates right now for sand volleyball are 29th and 30th. After conversation with our AEC and board members that are in the football world, our 7-on-7 right now is moved back to the end of June. If possible, we would probably move that end of June into July and do a modified format. So for 7-on-7, just understand, coaches, we're looking at an opportunity to still provide that opportunity, but it would be in July, and we know we'd have to modify the format.
All right, thank you, Brian. Another summer question. When members of our school's cross-country team, if they want to meet and work out during the summer, what, if any, restrictions would apply from a TAPS perspective?
Section 136, summer rules. You have 15 hours of contact, so you have those 15 hours. And if dead week is where, like it is currently with no change, you would not be able to work out with them during during dead week. If we make modification, it would still be the 15 hours. So right now, cross country, once you move on and your school has finished school, and once your school says it's okay to come back on campus and do those things, once the city, the state, all those things say yes, you'd be ready to go.
All right, another related question about summer leagues. Are summer leagues allowed? And if so, does that count toward the 15-hour per week limit?
Summer league practice would definitely count towards the 15-hour per week. TAPS does not and has not governed summer leagues. So if you're participating in those, you're allowed to do it. Again, section 136 summer rules will cover that for you. Go to taps.biz. On the bottom left-hand corner on the red bar, it says bylaws. Click on bylaws, go get you a soda pop, let it load up. When you get back, it ought to be there. Scroll down to section 136 summer rules. In there, the 15 hours of practice you have 15 hours of practice, but the games themselves would not count.
All right, we got a few questions regarding physicals. For physicals that may come later in the year due to doctor availability, is there a cutoff date in the fall or winter for a physical to be completed or to be scheduled?
Let me be clear. TAPS does not care what the physical says or doesn't say. TAPS, in helping to protect our schools and our organization, we require the physical. It's for each school to make those determinations you're asking. As a former coach, as a trainer, as a director, as a school leader, I would want to have the most up-to-date physical information of my kids before they began practice or began competition. So long way to say, you need to get them as soon as you can, as soon as practical, and they do have to have one at least from the previous year that you can re-upload before they can start. I don't know, Robert, does that cover it all or did I miss it?
Yes, no, I think that is. Another one rated physicals, does show choir have to have a physical?
That is a no. Cheer, dance, and marching or field band.
Okay, we have a couple of questions here related to transfers. Do fine art students have to go through the transfer process as well?
That is a no. That is athletic participation. However, the deadlines for attendance would apply.
All right, another summer question I missed here. If our athletes are working at a little kid camp for community service hours, does that count toward their activity hours?
It depends on if you're directing in those activities. So if they're going to demonstrate and run up and down a basketball court or play on a volleyball court under your direction for an hour, then yes, it would count. Otherwise, no, that would be considered employment, not summer league play.
All right, we got a question here about what is the definition of a school being open? School staff on site?
You're not open if your kids aren't there. So my quick definition is this. Once your school, once your city, once your county, once your governing authority or state or a national authority opens you up, then you're good to go. Once your school says students can return to campus. So it's up to each school to determine if students can come back to campus. So if you're in all virtual right now, then you're still in session. So until your school opens up and says students can come back on campus, all students, then athletic opportunities are curtailed as well. Meaning, if a student can't come in and use your computer lab, if they can't come in and talk to their counselor, if they can't come in and do summer enrichment on your campus in your classroom, then they can't be in your weight room and they can't be on your fields of play as it's presently presented. That the governor may have more information than that after talking with folks in Austin. I feel confident that he'll give us some instruction on Monday.
Okay, here's a question that's kind of a couple of topics combined. Students cannot take part in summer off-season training until they have been rolled over and are eligible in rank 1, correct? Is that the same for Zoom workouts?
Live Zoom or recorded Zoom. So they should not be participating in your live workouts unless they've been rolled over as well. They're still somebody else's students. If we're talking transfer students, they're either the middle school student or your previous school student until such time. So they should not be participating in your Zoom workouts until they've been enrolled in your school and promoted into rank 1 as well.
We have a rank 1 promotion question. We're not going to try to address that because it's multifaceted here. If you would reach out to us, info@taps.biz. If you have questions about what you've learned or heard in the Rank 1 promotion process related to things we're discussing today, eligibility going forward, forms being available, and all those types of things, reach out to us here in the office. We can help you walk through that in specific detail and make sure that you have everything in order. I know a part of that promotion process for Rank 1 included you having your local school forms updated and ready to go so that when they roll over their system to next year, that those people enrolling and updating their profile are only seeing the correct information. So we won't try to address that one here, but if you do have those types of questions, please reach out to us here. We'll be glad to help you. Let me see if we've got others here. Okay, here's one up here at the top. All right, when can coaches begin TAP scope training and acknowledgement rules for next school year? That's a great question.
It's a great question. And last year with our transfer into Rank 1, there were several things that were hard to follow. That was one of the main things I think that was hard for people to get their head around. So our coach education, we're not going to call it scope anymore. We'll come up with a fun new name and acronym for you to learn. But our coach education will not begin until after the TAPS convention. So whether we're virtual or whether we're in person on the 9th and 10th, so scope can begin on the 11th. So we're not going to call it scope. We're going to call it something else. But coach education, you can begin for next year on July 10th. And the new modules will be up on the website, and we'll have more information for that as we move forward.
All right. Can in-person on-campus workouts begin on May 18th?
That would go back to, is your school open? Has your school allowed in-person? And has the governor and others? So right now, according to our governor, the answer is no until the end of the school year. But we have asked, as have the UIL and others, to give us clarification. We will know more on that as Monday. But as of right now, the answer to May 18th is TAPS is going to summer, but that does not mean they can come on your campus to work out. More information on that will be presented at next week's webinars.
Okay, I think we've covered most of the questions we've received so far. Like John mentioned earlier, if we happen to miss your question, several of them were very similar, so we may have overlooked one. We apologize if we did. If you had a specific question that was not answered in our presentation or was not answered in the questions that we have tried to address, please don't hesitate to give us a call, shoot us an email, info@taps.biz, and we'll be glad to help you. We want answers just like you do. So we're trying very hard to plan and prepare for every possible contingency. As soon as we have information, we'll pass that along and communicate that to you. Remember, I'll give you my lawyer disclaimer again before we sign off here and conclude this thing. Everything we've shared today about what TAPS will allow and our rules that will apply is always subject to the orders that are in effect from our national, state, and local authorities. So please keep that in mind in anything you're thinking about planning or preparing for. You certainly want to work within the TAPS rules, but we're subservient to those rules. All of us are at this point, not just in these activities, but in living our daily lives. Brian?
I want to touch briefly to help go sport by sport. I think it's a little easier if we do it in activity by activity, whether it's cheer, dance, or football. We're going to have upcoming webinars beginning next Tuesday. You can find those on the TAPS calendar. Go to taps.biz, click on the word calendar, then click on the webinar. It'll give you a way to sign up for that. Another way is to go to taps.biz, hover over COVID, go all the way to the bottom of that drop-down screen. It says 2020 webinars. You can click on it there. It'll take you to the same page and you can sign up. Or if you're really bored, go to taps.biz, click on COVID-19 update. It'll take you over there, click on the button that says 2020 webinars, and you'll be able to sign up that way. So we encourage you, sport by sport, activity. Please join us for those so that we can dive down and really get a little more granular. We can talk about cheer tryouts, dance tryouts. We can talk about fall band. We can talk about all the opportunities. We'll talk more about 7-on-7. We'll talk more about whether we're going to do spike down, what's going to happen with travel, the dates for the competition. So just one thing that we really didn't say, and I just want to leave you with this as we go forward, is that remember that our TAPS calendar is a step-by-step progression. As of right now, Our first plan, our first option is to operate just like we have on the calendar. We have other opportunities that will come up. We're going to have other challenges that we're going to face. I think our CDC and the staffs across the nation, health-wise, are saying challenges will continue. We will have plans for that. So right now, based on the information we have and on the best information we've been able to obtain, we're going to plan on working our calendar as it's scheduled right now, and then we'll look to move forward from that.
Also, we have the convention that we're planning for July 8th through 10th, and we're hoping we can pull it all off. On the 8th, we'll have the new athletic director training. We'll have our first golf tournament in the afternoon, and the board will have a reception for everyone in the exhibit hall at the Waco Convention Center. And then July 9th and 10th, we will have breakout sessions. Registration is open for attendees, but we're also going to be sending out the opportunity and application for those that want to be presenters. We have a few spots available there. And if you're interested in presenting at that, please fill out an application, and we'll see who all we can get invited and join the party at the convention. Hopefully that will be happening in person. If not, it will happen virtually. So thank you very much.
To all of you listening and to all of our extended TAPS family, we're all in this together. We have kind of chosen and claimed embracing our challenges as our theme for the coming year. We're going to do the very best we can to be knowledgeable and make step-by-step progression, plan by plan, and be willing to change. For those of you that are track coaches or tennis coaches, and you've been at a TAPS track meet, you know that the weather may change us or other things may come about. We have to be flexible. So we will be. We are in this together, and TAPS is an extended family. We're all in this together. We step by step. It's kind of like the long lost uncle that shows up for Thanksgiving. If something happens, we'll move forward. I will say that for the most part, we have done a tremendous job as an organization. Our students, our families, our fans, our coaches, our staffs, our administrators. My congratulations to all of y'all on getting through here. As I look out my window at Texas Motor Speedway today, they're putting up orange cones for graduation. I don't know that anybody had the idea ever before that mom and dad would drive in a car, the car would be 6 foot apart, and we would watch graduation on a big screen while our kids were on the front stretch walking across the finish line getting their graduation and their diploma. But we're all in it together. Folks, I appreciate you. Again, www.taps.biz. Go there daily. Look at the top, look at the post. If you haven't been to www.taps.biz, go there, click on athletics or fine arts. We'll continue to update each page and each blog as we go across. If you need us, info @taps.biz. We are working remotely, but we still answer the phone when we can, 254-947-9268, 254-947-9268. And for all of your questions about summer, the rules that are there, go to taps.biz, bottom left-hand corner, bylaws, click on it, let it load. Once it's loaded, drop down to section 136 and go to summer rules. As we get closer to fall, we'll give you more information. As we get into the summer, we'll give you more information. Please join us next week for our webinars. And again, thank you for your support of TAPS and being part of our extended TAPS family.
Thank you, Brian, and everybody in the office. Again, the recording of this webinar is going to be made available on our YouTube page. That's youtube.com/tapsbiz. It's going to take maybe an hour and a half to get this converted and uploaded. The link will be sent to you in a follow-up email tomorrow. We're also going to be putting the link on our social media pages and on our website as soon as it's available. And if you watch this or if you share this again on our YouTube channel, please consider subscribing. The more subscribers that we have, the more features we can use, like broadcasting from mobile devices, and that helps us cover more and more things. Broadcasting might be more and more important as this situation develops in the fall. We don't know what it's going to be like, so the more tools that we have to meet whatever challenges arise, the better. Thank you, folks, for joining us, and we'll have this available. Again, if we didn't get to your questions, please send us an email at info@taps.biz or call us at the office. You folks have a good day.